Less than 24 hours ago, we did Baby Safe Haven podcast number 1. And this one now, I guess, has to be 1A, because it seems something happened less than 12 hours after we did that podcast. Last night, the first podcast was, what's the first job of a Baby Safe Haven advocate? And we went over how Baby Safe Haven advocates are usually in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I found out actually in their 80s in some places, and how the people that use the laws are really teens to 20s, but getting the information to teens is the most important thing. And we mentioned an individual, I think it was 3 times. I know it was twice. And in less than 12 hours, that individual was the Time Person of the Year. The Time individual, the Time Person of the Year. And that was 16-year-old, and she started when she was 15-year-old, Greta Thunburg. And really it's interesting because we've been following, that young woman's, I'll say career, but what she's been doing for quite some time. And, literally Time Magazine, after they came out with the Person of the Year for 2019, which was her, they came out with a reason why. And it's like over the course of a little more than a year, a 16-year-old from Stockholm went from a solitary protest on the cobblestones outside of her country's parliament to leading a worldwide youth movement. From a kid's conjuring verbs in French class to meeting the Secretary General of the United Nations and receiving audiences with President, the Pope. Solo demonstrator with a hand-painted slogan paper to inspiring millions of people from more than 150 countries to take to the streets and, take care of climate change is what they're looking to do. That's at 15 to 16 years old. And that's exactly what we were talking about last night. If I look down on the Time Magazine story, Greta stands on the shoulders and at the sides of hundreds of thousands of others, who'd been doing the climate change protests and so forth. How is it that a 15 to 16-year-old does that? And nothing happens like that in Baby Safe Haven laws, any safe haven laws. The answer is because she's been picked to be the spokesperson, the advocate to go after Gen Z. Gen Z has a massive, massive amount of power behind them. And that's why this happened. It took only 12 hours, or actually less than that, about 10 hours from the time we put our blog up to this particular person that we mentioned yesterday to becoming Time Magazine Person of the Year. So we commend Time Magazine, obviously, and we don't have to agree with everything that Greta Thunberg says. It's not our advocacy. Where would Baby Safe Haven laws and where would Safe Haven laws? And really what I have to say to Time Magazine is, where have you been? We've been doing this style of promotion here in Massachusetts for 15 years, almost to the week now. It's about 15 years ago in the last week or so that we started putting together our protocols. And protocol number 1 was working with young people exclusively to put out the information towards their peers. And it started with what we know as the Baby Safe Haven Rap TV PSA, and there was some audio one similar to that. That revolutionized everything. That was our sort of Greta Thunberg moment. We had a group of, I think it was 7 or 8 young people doing that TV commercial. And that's how you change everything. So right now, we want to go out and recruit as many young Gretas as we possibly can. Everything's going to change now because of that Time Magazine Person of the Year and cover story. We're going to be looking for more cover stories and more young people than any other time in history because obviously the power is there to make changes. And that's what we have to do. So I kind of had to follow up, this podcast that we did yesterday and call it, podcast number 1A, what's the job of a safe haven advocate? Well, the job is obviously to do exactly what Time Magazine did. They cleared the path of every one of these older advocates in safe haven laws. That's now the point that we can point to and say, look, we've done it for 15 years here in Massachusetts, and we're getting the results. Greta got the results. 15 to 16 years old, she got the results. We're going to do the same thing. So if you're holding back and if you think you're not going to do something like this, we want you to comment, put anything you got to say underneath, and don't tell me about what she's talking about. We want people to talk about the information that we need to get out to teens and 20s, and it's going to be gotten out by their own generation. That's what's going to happen. Nobody's going to dispute that. I'd love to see you try to dispute it. And don't give me this everything. Everybody needs to do it. Nope. Everybody is Greta Thunberg and all of her peers. That's who everybody is. And we discussed that last night. So if you want to go back and listen to yesterday's podcast number 1, this being number 1A, you can go back and listen to that. Listen to the whole thing all the way through, because there's information in almost every single minute of it. And then come back and, put a comment down. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you again very soon.